You've seen it again, haven't you? The ocean appearing in your dreams, not once or twice, but repeatedly, like it is trying to reach you through something deeper than normal thought. And every time you wake up, there is that strange feeling you can't fully explain. Not fear, not peace, but something in between, like your mind briefly touched a place it was never meant to fully remember. Why the ocean? Why not familiar places, not faces you know, not everyday situations? Why does something so vast, so deep, so endless keep returning to you when you sleep? Because this is not random, and deep down, you already sense that truth. There is something about these dreams that refuses to behave like ordinary imagination. They don't fade quickly. They stay with you. They echo in your silence, in your thoughts, in those quiet moments when everything slows down. It feels almost as if they are waiting for you to finally pay attention. And the truth is, you are not just dreaming about water. You are being shown something hidden beneath the surface of your awareness, something that does not speak in words, but in symbols, in feelings, in impressions that linger long after you wake up. The ocean in your dreams is not just an image your mind created. It is a message, a coded experience that keeps returning while you sleep, gently pulling you toward a meaning you have not fully understood yet. And the more you ignore it, the more it comes back, deeper, stronger, closer, like it refuses to be dismissed. Because some messages are not meant to be understood immediately. They are meant to awaken something inside you first. And what you are about to realize about these dreams may change the way you see everything forever. You are not ordinary, and deep down, you have always known it, even if you never had the words to explain it. Since childhood, there has been something different about you. While others seemed fully absorbed in the world around them, you often felt slightly outside of it, like you were observing life more than fully belonging to it. You noticed things others missed. You felt things others ignored. And sometimes, that awareness made you feel isolated, even in a room full of people. There were moments when you preferred silence over noise, solitude over crowds, reflection over distraction. Not because you hated people, but because your inner world felt more real than the external one. You think deeply, sometimes too deeply. You question things others accept without hesitation. And because of that, you may have often felt misunderstood. But this is not a flaw. It is a signature, a pattern that has followed you since the beginning. Even your sensitivity is not weakness. You feel energy, emotions, and shifts in people and environments that others completely overlook. You sense when something is off, even without evidence. You pick up on details that seem invisible to most. And sometimes, that makes you feel like you are carrying something heavier than those around you can understand. And then there is this inner calling, a quiet but persistent feeling that your life is meant for something more than repetition, routine, and survival. It is not loud, it does not force itself, but it never fully disappears either. It follows you in the background of your thoughts, like a reminder you cannot erase. There are even moments where you ask yourself, why do I feel like this? Why do I see things this way? Why do I feel different from others? And the answer is not simple, but it is real. You were never meant to experience life in a completely ordinary way. Your awareness, your depth, your sensitivity, and your constant inner questioning are not accidents. They are part of a deeper pattern that has been unfolding within you for a long time. And the more you try to ignore it, the more it shows itself in different forms. In your thoughts, your emotions, your dreams, and even in the way life feels around you. Because what you are experiencing is not just personality. It is a form of awakening that begins quietly, but never stays silent forever. The ocean in your dreams does not appear in only one form. It changes, shifts, behaves like it is reflecting something inside you rather than showing something outside of you. Sometimes you see a calm ocean, still water stretching endlessly, almost hypnotic. There is no fear in these dreams, only silence, depth, and a strange sense of being watched by something vast and ancient. In those moments, it feels like everything in your life has slowed down, as if the world itself is breathing more gently. But even in that calmness, there is something powerful, something unspoken, like the ocean is not empty, but holding something beneath its surface that you cannot yet see. And then there are other nights. Nights where the ocean is not calm at all. The waves rise violently, crashing without warning. The sky feels heavy, the water darker, deeper, almost endless. You may find yourself standing near it, or inside it, or simply watching it destroy everything in its path. These dreams carry intensity, emotional weight, a sense of urgency that lingers even after you wake up. It is not just fear you feel, but transformation happening through chaos. And sometimes, you are not watching. You are inside it, drowning, or floating, or struggling between both states. But here is the strange part. Even when you are drowning in the dream, there is often a moment where you do not feel like you are dying. Instead, it feels like surrender, like something inside you stops resisting. And sometimes, instead of fear, there is silence, a deep silence that feels almost spiritual. Other times, you are simply watching the waves, standing at a distance, observing them move endlessly, as if they are alive, as if they are communicating something without words. In those moments, you are not part of the ocean, but you are not separate from it either. You are in between, and if you pay attention closely, you will notice a pattern. These ocean dreams are never emotionally random. They reflect your internal state in ways your waking mind cannot fully process. When life feels uncertain, the waves become stronger. When you are emotionally overwhelmed, the water becomes deeper. When you are in a phase of reflection or isolation, the ocean becomes calm but infinite. It is as if your subconscious mind is using the ocean as a language made of movement, depth, silence, and force. Because the ocean is not just water in your dreams. It is a symbol, a living reflection of your emotional and spiritual world. It represents what is beneath the surface of your awareness, the parts of you that are not spoken, not fully understood, not fully controlled. It holds your fears, your transitions, your hidden emotions, and sometimes your awakening. That is why it keeps returning in different forms, because it is not trying to confuse you, it is trying to reveal you to yourself, one wave at a time. The deeper you look into these ocean dreams, the more one truth begins to emerge. They are not just emotional reflections, and they are not just psychological symbols. They are pointing towards something far more profound. Because in many spiritual interpretations, the ocean represents something vast that cannot be contained by the mind. It represents the unseen, the unknown, the infinite layers of existence that go beyond logic and daily perception. And when it appears repeatedly in your dreams, it often signals that something within you is entering a phase of awakening. Not an external awakening, but an internal one, a shift in awareness, a transition from one state of being into another. When the ocean appears calm, it often reflects moments where your soul is being invited into stillness, not inactivity, but clarity. It is like life is asking you to slow down internally so you can hear what is usually drowned out by noise. In those dreams, the calm ocean is not empty. It is presence. It is awareness without disturbance. But when the ocean becomes stormy, it reflects something else entirely. It reflects emotional purification, because storms in water often symbolize internal movement that cannot be avoided. Feelings rising, old attachments being released, inner resistance breaking down. It may feel chaotic, but spiritually, chaos is often the beginning of real transformation. What is unstable is not always destruction. Sometimes it is restructuring. And then there is drowning in the ocean, a symbol that many fear. But in deeper meaning, it does not always represent loss. It often represents surrender. The ego, the old identity, the limited version of who you think you are, dissolving into something larger, not physically, but internally. A symbolic death of an old self, so a new awareness can emerge. And floating in the ocean carries another message entirely. It represents trust, letting go of control, being carried by something greater than your understanding. Not everything in life is meant to be controlled. Some phases require you to simply exist, to move with what you cannot yet explain, to allow life to guide you without resistance. When you combine all of these patterns, calm waters, storms, drowning, floating, you begin to see a cycle rather than random dreams, a cycle of emotional and spiritual movement, expansion, release, surrender, and renewal. And this is where the deeper interpretation begins, because the ocean, in this context, becomes a mirror of transformation, a symbolic space where your inner world is being reshaped. It reflects emotional cleansing, where old burdens are washed away, not through logic, but through experience. It reflects rebirth, where something within you is no longer the same after each cycle of these dreams. You may not notice it immediately, but over time, your reactions, your thoughts, your awareness begin to change subtly, and that is what transformation often looks like. Not dramatic, but continuous. These dreams may also indicate that you are in a transition phase of life, a stage where the old version of you no longer fully fits, but the new version has not fully formed yet. This in-between state can feel confusing because it is neither the past nor the future. It is the space where identity is being reshaped quietly. And in many spiritual frameworks, such experiences are seen as a form of calling, not a loud calling, not a spoken one, but an inner pull towards something greater than routine existence. A direction that cannot be fully explained, only felt. The ocean becomes a symbol of that calling because it is vast, unknown, and deeper than what the surface shows. It invites reflection, it invites awareness, it invites change. So when you experience these dreams repeatedly, it is not just your mind processing daily life. It may be something deeper unfolding within you, a process of internal awakening where emotion, awareness, and identity begin to shift together. And the more you observe it without fear, the more you start to understand that these dreams are not pushing you away from yourself. They are slowly guiding you toward a version of yourself you have not fully met yet. These ocean dreams rarely exist alone. Over time, many people notice something else beginning to happen in their waking life. Small patterns, subtle shifts, and strange coincidences that feel too precise to ignore. One of the most common signs is synchronicity. You start noticing repeating numbers, repeated timing, or meaningful patterns that seem to follow you everywhere. It might be on clocks, receipts, phone screens, or random places you wouldn't expect. At first, it feels like coincidence, but when it keeps happening again and again, it starts to feel intentional, like something is trying to get your attention without using words. And it is not just numbers, it is timing. You think about something, and shortly after, you see it in real life. You ask a question internally, and the answer appears in unexpected ways. You feel a certain emotion strongly, and the outside world reflects it back to you almost immediately. These moments create a strange sense that life is not just random, but somehow aligned with your internal state. At the same time, another shift begins to appear, a feeling of disconnection from your past life. Things that once felt important start to feel distant. People, habits, conversations, environments, they may still be there, but your attachment to them begins to weaken. It is not necessarily sadness. It is more like detachment, as if a part of you is no longer fully rooted in what used to define your identity. And because of this, isolation often increases naturally. You may find yourself wanting more silence, more time alone, more distance from unnecessary noise, not because you dislike others, but because your internal world starts demanding more space. Solitude begins to feel less like loneliness and more like clarity. In isolation, your thoughts become sharper, your awareness deeper, and your perception more sensitive. During this phase, something else becomes stronger, your intuition. You begin to know things without clear reasoning. You sense outcomes before they happen. You feel the direction of situations before they unfold. Decisions become less about logic and more about inner certainty. It is not always easy to explain, but it feels like an internal compass that becomes more active over time. And the most interesting part is this: the more you trust it, the clearer it becomes. You start noticing that your instincts were often right even before evidence appeared. You begin to understand people not just through their words, but through their energy, their patterns, their presence. Situations reveal themselves faster in your awareness than before. When you connect all of these signs together, synchronicities, emotional detachment, desire for solitude, and rising intuition, they form a pattern of internal shift. It is as if your perception is being recalibrated, not toward the outside world, but toward something deeper within you. And this is where the connection to your dreams becomes important again, because what happens in your sleep and what happens in your waking life begin to mirror each other in subtle ways. The ocean dreams reflect depth, emotion, and transformation, and your waking experiences begin to reflect alignment, awareness, and internal change. It is not always loud or obvious. It is gradual, almost invisible at first. But over time, it becomes harder to ignore that something in your life is no longer operating at the same frequency it used to. And whether you interpret it spiritually, psychologically, or symbolically, the pattern remains the same. You are beginning to notice a deeper layer of reality that was always there, but previously unnoticed. This phase is where things start to feel different in a way you cannot easily explain. Because once these dreams, these signs, and this inner shift begin to accumulate, life does not always remain stable. In fact, many people go through a period where everything feels like it is slightly out of place. Not completely broken, but no longer predictable either. You may notice changes happening in different areas of your life at the same time. Emotions become stronger and more unpredictable. Situations you thought were stable begin to shift. People you trusted may start to feel distant, or conversations that once felt normal now feel strangely disconnected. It is as if the structure of your familiar reality is quietly rearranging itself. And during this stage, confusion is completely normal. In fact, confusion is part of the process, because when something within you begins to expand, your mind tries to understand it using old frameworks. But those frameworks no longer fully match what you are experiencing. So there is a gap between what you feel internally and what you can logically explain. That gap creates uncertainty, questioning, and sometimes emotional discomfort. You may even start asking yourself if something is wrong, but often nothing is wrong in the way you think. It is transition, and transition rarely feels stable while it is happening. Another difficult part of this phase is misunderstanding. People around you may not understand what you are going through. From the outside, nothing may look unusual. You still speak, work, interact, and function. But internally, your perception is shifting. And because this experience is not visible, it becomes difficult to explain. When you try to share it, you might notice different reactions. Some may dismiss it, others may not relate at all, and some may simply not have the language to understand what you are describing. This can create a feeling of being alone in your experience, even when surrounded by others. But this is not a sign that you are disconnected from reality. It is a sign that your inner world is developing in a direction that is not yet fully shared by your external environment. And this is where the inner transformation becomes more noticeable. You begin to question old beliefs, old habits, and old versions of yourself. Things that once felt automatic now require reflection. Your reactions begin to change. Your priorities slowly shift. Even your sense of identity may feel like it is being rewritten in real time. This is not a sudden change. It is gradual restructuring. Like something inside you is being reorganized layer by layer, without rushing, without announcement, but with intention. And although this process can feel unstable, there is a pattern within it. What feels like confusion is often reorientation. What feels like distance is often detachment from what no longer aligns. What feels like uncertainty is often the space before clarity forms. In this phase, it is important to understand that transformation does not always arrive with comfort. Sometimes it arrives with disruption, not to destroy you, but to remove what no longer fits the direction you are moving toward. And that is why this stage feels so intense. Because you are no longer fully who you were. But you are not yet fully who you are becoming. When you enter this phase of repeated ocean dreams and inner shifts, the most important thing is not to panic or overreact. The experience itself is already intense enough. What you need now is clarity, grounding, and awareness in your daily life, so you don't get overwhelmed by everything happening internally. One of the first and most powerful steps is silence. Not just physical silence, but mental silence. Take moments during your day where you step away from noise, distractions, and constant input. This can be through meditation, sitting alone without your phone, or simply observing your breath. The goal is not to escape reality, but to reconnect with yourself without interference. In silence, your mind starts to settle, and your inner perception becomes clearer. Meditation can also help stabilize your emotional state. You don't need complex techniques. Even a few minutes of focused breathing, observing your thoughts without judgment, or simply sitting in stillness can create a noticeable shift over time. It helps you become less reactive and more aware of what is happening within you. Another key point is learning to trust your intuition. During this stage, your inner guidance often becomes more active, but also more subtle. It doesn't always speak loudly. It appears as a feeling, a sense of direction, or a quiet knowing. The more you ignore it, the more confusing things may feel. But when you begin to observe it carefully and test it in small decisions, you start to notice patterns where it often leads you correctly. At the same time, it is important to reduce distractions. Constant stimulation, social media, unnecessary conversations, overthinking, endless content can make your mind louder than your inner awareness. And when the external noise becomes too strong, it becomes harder to understand what you are truly feeling. Creating boundaries with distractions allows your mind to regain balance. Another powerful practice is writing your dreams down, especially these ocean dreams. The moment you wake up, try to note what you saw, what you felt, and any emotions that stood out. Over time, patterns begin to appear that you might not notice in the moment. Writing transforms confusion into structure. It helps you see connections between dreams, emotions, and life events that would otherwise remain hidden. And most importantly, stay grounded. Grounding does not mean denying your experiences. It means balancing them with your daily responsibilities, your physical reality, and your basic well-being. Eat properly, sleep well, take care of your body, and maintain healthy routines. Spiritual or internal experiences become much more stable when the physical foundation is strong. You don't need to rush to understand everything at once. This process unfolds gradually. The goal is not to force meaning, but to remain aware while things unfold naturally. The more you stay calm, observant, and grounded, the less overwhelming the experience becomes, and the more clarity begins to form on its own. Because in the end, guidance is not about controlling the experience. It is about learning how to move through it with awareness, balance, and inner stability. Everything you have just heard leads back to one simple truth. None of this is random. Not the dreams, not the patterns, not the emotions you cannot explain, and not the strange sense that something inside you is shifting in ways you cannot fully control. There is a deeper layer to your experience that most people never stop to question. Because most people are too distracted by daily life to notice the subtle language that life sometimes uses. But you are noticing it, and that alone changes everything about how this journey unfolds for you. These ocean dreams are not just passing images of the mind. They carry emotional weight, symbolic depth, and a strange persistence that makes them impossible to fully ignore. They return because something within you is still processing, still unfolding, still becoming aware of itself in ways that your conscious mind is only beginning to understand. And maybe the most important part is not finding a quick answer, but learning how to sit with the question itself. What is the ocean showing you? What part of you is being reflected in its depth, its silence, its storms, and its endless horizon? Because sometimes, meaning does not arrive as a single explanation. Sometimes it reveals itself slowly, through reflection, through awareness, and through the way you begin to see your own life differently over time. And as you move forward, something inside you may already be changing, even if you cannot fully describe it yet. The way you think, the way you feel, the way you interpret your own experiences, it is all part of a deeper shift that is still in motion. So instead of rushing to define it, you are being invited to observe it, to notice it, to allow it to reveal itself step by step. And now, the question becomes personal. Have you experienced these ocean dreams too? Do they feel like random images or something more meaningful happening within your inner world? Share your experience in the comments, not just for others to read, but because sometimes speaking about it helps you see it more clearly yourself. And your story might help someone else realize they are not alone in this experience either. Because in the end, this is not just about dreams, it is about awareness. And what you choose to see in them may quietly shape the way you understand yourself moving forward.